we'll jump right in here. What does detox even mean? My goal here today is to sort of flip the notion of detox on its head. And I hope that you will gain a new understanding of what detox is all about. So detox has become this buzzword in the health and wellness space. And I think for a lot of us, when we think of detox, we think of maybe an extreme nutritional detox, like a juice cleanse. You've probably seen advertisements on TV or on social media or even in magazines about some kind of detox. And usually when we hear that word, we think about removing or cutting something out or restricting something. We do know that the practice of cleansing the human body of toxins is as old as humankind itself. Throughout history, we've seen medical and spiritual traditions in various cultures around the world using different means to detox our bodies, whether that's through sweat lodges or fasting, saunas of different kinds. This is something that humans have been doing and thinking about for a long time. Today, when we feel like we might need a detox, we might feel something like brain fog. Those moments when you're looking and you're going, my brain, it's just not working. We might have super low energy or develop some skin rashes or bloating in our abdominal area. Even sometimes mood imbalances can be linked to high toxins in our bodies. When you start to feel these things, we know that it's time to take action and start to think about doing some kind of detox. That said, I believe that detoxing actually means to energize your life. Detoxing is not necessarily about removing things. It's about making choices that energize you and reducing those things that drain you of your vital life energy. So, the fundamentals of detox. I like to say that detoxing is bio-individual. And that means that it's a unique journey for everyone. My goal tonight is to present you with information for different areas of your life. And then you can go home, try some things for yourself, and figure out what works for you. So in this context, bio-individuality, it means basically that everyone's journey is different. We all have different histories. We all have different physical bodies. We all have different mental strengths and imbalances. And so I'm going to give you suggestions for each of these areas, but those suggestions may not be right for you right now. And so your job is to listen to all these suggestions and think about which ones sound accessible, because the place to start is the place that feels manageable. So you're going to hear a lot of information, but I like to break it down into two sort of ideas that you'll hear throughout this presentation. When I think about detox, I will be talking about this concept called crowding out, which basically means adding in so many healthy elements that there's no space left for the less healthy things. And we're going to do that through something that I like to call sustainable shifts. And that means to experiment with one idea at a time so that those changes feel sustainable. The small changes add up to big changes. And often what happens is people try to overhaul their entire lives and then they get really overwhelmed and they throw in the towel. So by making these sort of small sustainable shifts, you can make these incremental changes that over time add up to something big. Let's see. Okay, checking my notes here. Perfect. So the first area that we're going to talk about is detoxing your nutrition. I feel like this is probably the reason that a lot of people are here tonight. It's January. Everybody's thinking about their New Year's resolutions. Maybe not anymore. It's January 28th, and most people's resolutions, including mine, go out the door by like the 14th. So I guess the place to start is that One of the most amazing things about the human body is that we have the innate ability to heal ourselves. One of the best examples of this idea is when you get a paper cut on your finger. The first thing that happens is blood rushes to the surface, and if you watch over the course of a couple of hours, your skin transforms into a scab, and your body is able to close up that scab by itself. Nobody had to teach you how to do that. Your genes and all of the ancestral knowledge that our bodies carry are programmed to do that. So your body wants to be healthy, your body wants to be in balance. And there are things that we can do to make that healing capability even stronger. So when it comes to food, detoxing is more than just eating clean, which is a phrase that gets thrown around a lot right now, or choosing organic foods. So I want to give you some strategies to help you make your body's innate ability to heal itself stronger. And contrary to popular belief, detoxing your nutrition can actually be an enjoyable process that doesn't involve taking out all of the things that you love to eat. So when we think about crowding out, what we want to think about is replenishing your body with nutrients that it needs. And then when we think about our sustainable shift here in detoxing your nutrition, we think about minimizing our exposure to potential toxins. I think the number is that the average American makes about 200 decisions about food every single day. So when we think about it that way, food is exhausting and it literally consumes us. What's really interesting is that every bite of food that we take either has the ability to make us healthier or less healthy. When we say it that way, it's like, why would I ever eat a brownie? We know that that food isn't good for us, but there's more to food than just the nutrition. And that's where it gets tricky. Food is emotional. Food can bring us joy. Food can bring us nourishment in a way that's not just physical. So that's sort of why I rebel against taking those foods out, because there's value in that sort of mental, emotional nutrition that certain types of food can also offer us. What I want to talk about first here are the things that we can add into our daily lives to make sure that we are taking in more foods that help us fight things like inflammation and chronic disease, and help us protect our organs from the harmful effects of toxins. So one thing that we can do is get 5 daily servings of colorful plant-based foods. The second thing is to get good quality dietary protein, which will contain a full array of essential vitamins and minerals. And then the last thing is to incorporate more hydrating foods, which are nutrient dense and important for dietary complexity. So let's start with the plants. Food and nutrients can counteract inflammation and this phenomenon called oxidative stress, which I think probably a lot of us have heard of the thing of something called antioxidants. When we don't have enough of them, our bodies go into this thing called oxidative stress. So I'm a huge advocate of eating a plant-rich diet. It doesn't matter if you are keto, if you're vegan, if you're vegetarian, if you're paleo, if you fall somewhere in the middle. The thing that all of these dietary lifestyles have to have in common is that they all need to eat lots of different kinds of plants. And those plants are the things that protect us from harmful toxins. So getting 5 servings a day is hydrating. Plants, fruits and vegetables have lots of water in them, so you'll hydrate yourself further. They have fiber, so you'll fill yourself up, but be able to physically detox your digestive system. And all of those colors within the plants are there for a reason. The colors actually represent functional compounds. So when we eat a certain color, it goes to a certain place in our body. A really good example of that is the blue-purple compounds we see in blueberries, blackberries, plums. Those compounds make their way into parts of the brain that are responsible for learning and memory. So a lot of us are thinking about brain health right now. A lot of us are thinking about memory, and those are the foods that we want to include on a regular basis to help boost those things and protect those areas of our bodies from toxins. Another one are the sort of orange-yellow carotenoids. Those are located typically in what is the ovary of the plant, and they actually also play a role in women's fertility. So young women and men, actually, young women and men who are in that age, who are on this call, start to include more of those foods in your diet. Even if you're not thinking about having babies yet, boosting your fertility is a really good way to help with your overall health. So our entire body can be represented by different colors, which is part of why it's so important to literally eat the rainbow. I'm looking at Tori to see if there's any questions, but it doesn't look like it so far, so I'll keep going.
No questions yet, Anna, no questions yet.
Great, okay. Next thing is to talk about protein. Assuming you are good to go on plants, the other part of your diet you want to make sure that you are definitely including is high quality sources of protein. My typical mantra for a meal is plants plus protein. We need quality protein to ensure that we have the sulfur and the amino acids to shuttle toxins out of the body. So a lot of us think about adding protein to build muscle, or we think about protein to give us energy. All of those things are important, but actually consuming protein has a role in detoxifying the body as well. When I think about what is an optimal source of dietary protein, I think this is another thing that I would say is bio-individual. Some of us do really, really well with animal foods. Me, for example, I would love to eat a fully plant-based diet, but I simply don't have enough energy when I don't eat meat. So I do really well with those animal proteins. I know a lot of people who do really well without them as well. Some people have difficulty digesting animal proteins, but the thing is to find the source that works for you. So really good sources are grass-fed or pastured meats, poultry, free-range, like eggs that come from free-range chickens. Non-animal sources are lentils, beans. Anything that's a legume is a really good source of non-animal based protein. I forgot to say fish, lots of wild caught fish if you can find it. Next thing, we'll talk about hydration. Our bodies are largely made up of water, and when we don't have enough water in our bodies, we can't get rid of the toxins. So that water plays a huge part, not only in digestion, but it also plays a huge part in removing any environmental toxins that have accumulated, not just in our bloodstream, but in our organs and in our cell tissue as well. So we could all drink lots and lots of water, which would be great. And I wish everyone would do that. But a lot of the people that I work with struggle with that. They say they don't like water or they get bored of drinking it. So what I like to say is to start including those hydrating foods. So start to include things like soups and stews, smoothies, herbal teas. Those are all great additions to your lifestyle to help with detoxification. Let's see. Another great addition is bone broth, any kind of stock. And then what's really great about making something like a soup or a stew is that you can also add additional nutrient-dense food. So it's really easy to buy some high-quality bone broth and then add a handful of spinach, wilt it down. Maybe you add some lentils or chickpeas or something like that to the broth. And all of a sudden you've got a soup that's hydrating, nutrient dense, and filling. So it covers all three of these principles. All right, so let's move on to reducing toxins. We talked about adding all these things in. Now we are going to talk about pulling some things out. So here are my 3 keys for reducing our toxic exposure through nutrition. The first one, reducing processed foods. Processed foods are anything that you buy that comes in a wrapper, a container, a box, a bag, and typically they're foods that have to have some kind of ingredient list. If it's a food that doesn't have an ingredient list, it's not a processed food. Cucumbers, only ingredient, cucumber. But anything that comes wrapped is what we would call a processed food. One really easy way to reduce your processed foods typically is to stick to the perimeter of the grocery store. The way that I always think about it is that all of the foods that we want to be consuming lots and lots of have to be refrigerated in some capacity. They need to be plugged in, so they're all against the perimeters of the grocery stores. They're all up against the walls. And it's when you get into those inner aisles in the grocery stores that we start to get those foods in bags and boxes. The second thing is reducing our exposure to overcooked foods. I love a char-grilled steak as much as the next person, but it's an indulgence that I have every once in a while. So foods that are grilled, fried, broiled, roasted at really high temperature, basically anytime you see a food that has been made brown through cooking, it's going to have a few extra toxins along for the ride. So we can actually change the nutritional composition of a food by cooking it at high temperature and this dry heat. So when you see that kind of color change in the food with the crisp edges, or where a colorful food has sort of lost its vibrancy, you know that you've actually lost nutrients and gained some toxins. So cooking our food through steaming or using a slow, low, more wet method to cook our foods is ideal. Don't go crazy on this one. This is a really hard one because who doesn't love a roasted Brussels sprout that's super crispy? But it's something to think about. This one is, I think, probably more important for our animal proteins than for our vegetables. Last tip is to reduce or avoid foods that are filled with pesticides. Sounds like a tall order. One way you can do that is by choosing organically grown foods when they are available. Organically grown foods are grown and harvested in a way that don't have any pesticides or insecticides, herbicides. I put this picture of the artichoke with the ladybug on it because I think sometimes we bring our groceries home from the grocery store. We have a CSA, a community agriculture box that arrives at our house every week. And when we first started getting it here, my husband, I remember, pulled out some lettuce and there was a worm on the lettuce and he was like, "Oh my God, that's so gross." And I just looked at him and I was like, well, if a bug wants to eat it, we definitely want to eat it too. If a bug doesn't want to eat it, it probably also doesn't belong in our bodies. So a lot of our foods get so much treatment with pesticide that the insects stay away. And it's not because they know it's not good for them. So when you buy organically grown food, you reduce your toxic load. And there are some studies that have come out fairly recently, within the past year or two, that actually are starting to show that organic food has more nutrient density. So it is actually better for you. One way to make this easier is there is a list that comes out every year called the Dirty Dozen. And those are 12 foods that are have been studied that for the past year were the highest contaminated with pesticides. Typically foods that have a really thin skin on them or no skin at all. So berries are a really big one. Lettuces are another one. And those Dirty Dozen foods are foods that food experts say that you should always buy organic. foods that are on what we call, I think it's the clean 15 is the opposite list. Typically foods on there have a peel or don't grow directly in the ground. So bananas, oranges, things like that have lower pesticides. So if you can't buy everything organic, that's a really good way to differentiate what is essential to be organic and what's not.
Anna, thank you. We do have one question, and you're really walking us through this in a very digestible way, no pun intended there. So thank you for the pace you're going at. I think we can follow along. One attendee question is just regarding processed foods. What about bars that have only nuts, dried fruits, no added non-natural sugars, such as a Kind bar or RX bars? We might find those on the inside aisles of the grocery store, but would you consider those kind of acceptable and not processed foods?
Yeah, I mean, so I think a lot of that is, I'm going to probably refer to this a lot. A lot of that's bio-individual. If those foods are serving you really well, then yes, go for it. If you live a lifestyle that's really hectic, my general, so like I do, I have a full-time job, I coach people as well, so I have a part-time job, I have a baby, we live a hectic life. So do I live a perfect clean food life all the time? Absolutely not. Things like Kind bars and RX bars, the way that I think about it is, in theory, could I make this in my own kitchen? Something like a Kind bar or an RX bar, absolutely. I could throw those almonds and the dates and the egg white in a blender or in a food processor and shape them myself if I had the time. I don't, so I buy them. So yeah, things like that are technically processed foods, but that's the question that I ask myself. I hope that's helpful. Could I, in theory, make this in my own kitchen?
Great. And I just wanted to go back to one thing you mentioned on the previous slide was bone broth.
Yeah.
Can you elaborate on that? I feel like I've seen some fads, people drinking bone broth and doing different things. What are the benefits there? And is it something we should all be doing?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, if you are a person that can tolerate animal foods, I would highly recommend incorporating bone broth, especially in these winter months. It's incredibly beneficial for boosting immunity, for removing toxins. It's incredibly hydrating. What makes it slightly different from a classic broth is that with bone broth, when you are making it, you actually cook it until the bones are deteriorating. So all of that calcium, all of that additional collagen and those sort of micronutrients that live within the bones of animals actually begin to disintegrate and go into the broth. So it is whereas like a traditional chicken broth, right? You boil the chicken for 2 hours, whatever, and you have a stock. The difference is in the length of time that it takes to make. It's a really good base for making other things. If you like to, some people really enjoy drinking a mug of bone broth every single day. I think Kobe Bryant used to do that every single day. He used to talk about how that was part of why he was such a good basketball player. And other people are super into it like that. It's also really easy to use it once you have it, to use it as a base for something like a soup or a stew. What we do is typically one night a week, I roast a whole chicken and I collect 1 or 2 weeks worth of chickens and then break down the bones and the leftover pieces. I put them in the freezer. And then when I'm ready to make some broth, I use what's called an instant pot, which is kind of an updated version of a slow cooker. It's actually like a super fast cooker, but it cooks things at a really high pressure. So you can cook things that take a long time faster. I use an instant pot and I cook the bones in there with some filtered water, with anything else you would normally throw in a broth. Onions, carrots, celery, bay leaves. Cook it in the slow cooker, and then we end up with a couple of quarts of bone broth. I pour it into glass jars and freeze it. And every time I want to make a soup or something like that, I pull out one of those jars to defrost, and then we're ready to go. Right after I had my daughter, for some reason, I was like craving bone broth. I can't even describe it. So I knew somebody, I read that somewhere. So I made a huge batch of it. And I think I drank it out of a mug for like the first month of her life every single day. It's just one of those healing foods. There's a reason our grandmothers all fed us chicken soup when we were sick.
Awesome. Thank you. And then just one more question while we're kind of offbeat of the presentation. And if it's something that you're either going to cover later or not well versed to cover, Diana acknowledges that. But do you have any advice about the pH level of foods?
Yeah, such a good question and incredibly topical right now. Our bodies definitely want to be alkaline. That said, it's one of those things that I think it's really easy to go overboard with. So there's a couple of things that can certainly help shift our pH levels. Eating lots of dark leafy greens, drinking lots of water with lemon, things like that are really easy to incorporate, but that are generally like healthy practices all around that don't sort of like push you off the deep end of the extreme alkaline diet trend. That kind of answers the question.
Thank you. Yes, it does.
Okay, great.
That's it for now, but I'll pause you again when more comes in.
If we need more info, in general, my belief is that there are so many dietary trends and fads out there, and what happens is like a lot of people like to try one out, they try the other extreme out, right? Like how many friends do you know that like last year were keto, this year are vegan? But for most of us, we like the pendulum swings and we fall somewhere in the middle. We might lean one way or the other way, but like all of these things that they all have in common are where we find our health. So eat lots of green foods, drink lots of water. It's the same. It all comes back to these same basics. Okay, so clicking through here, if you are really further interested in detoxing your physical body more, the place I always turn people to is a woman named Deanna Minnick. She's a functional medicine practitioner and a nutritionist. I believe she's not a registered, I can't remember if she's an RD or a CNM, but she's wonderful and super centered, really accessible information. So I love her as an additional resource. All right, moving on to detoxing your beauty. I always like to think about this by imagining a typical morning for most of us. We wake up, we brush our teeth, we wash our face, we maybe shampoo our hair, we condition our hair, we wash our bodies with a different product, maybe we shave with shaving cream, maybe we put on body lotion, maybe we put on SPF or makeup before we walk out the door, before COVID, when we still walked out the door and went to places like work. But bottom line is the average American woman uses 12 products on her face or body before she even leaves her house in the morning. Those 12 products contain an average of 168 different chemicals. Why this is so important is because our skin is our largest organ. And the bottom line is that what you put on your skin ends up inside your body. One study that was published in the American Journal of Public Health showed that skin, on average, absorbs 64% of contaminants in water. So that's just from taking a shower or going in the pool, whatever it is, just from water. And other studies have found that actually our skin, and like places on our body that are extremely permeable, like our underarms or other really sensitive skin areas, have an absorption rate of 100%. Which is really scary when you start to think about this has been a whole revelation for me over the past couple of years, but I had no idea what was in the products that I was using. So when we start to, oh, one more point. Ooh, I'm going too fast here. One more point that I wanted to make on that was that, especially in the United States, other countries are better, but if you're coming to us from the United States here, there are virtually no regulations on what companies can put into products. And it's really easy for a personal care product company to say, this is a proprietary blend, and put a bunch of chemicals in there, and they don't have to release it to anyone to check it for health, for safety. So we put these things on our body that bypass any form of regulation, and it just sort of adds this layer of ambiguity. So the more that we learn to understand what's in the products that we're putting on our bodies, the more empowered we can be to make these choices that support our health. So when we talk about creating this routine that supports our health, I think it's really important to think about supporting our health physically and mentally. So my sustainable shift for this section is to read the ingredients and swap 1 or 2 products at a time. And then when we think about crowding out, adding in healthy elements, I want to think about celebrating our natural beauty. So we'll dive into both of those a little more. Here are some common ingredients. Please don't go, I went a little crazy on this slide and I apologize. What I would suggest is 2 things. If you have a phone with you, you can snap a picture of this slide on your screen. Or another really good resource is the Environmental Working Group, the EWG, I think it's ewg.org. Their website has a great list of ingredients. So here we go. When you start to switch over your products, it's the same as when you try any other new beauty product, personal care product. You might have to try a couple before you find one that works for your body. But by learning to read these labels and watching out for specific ingredients, you can start to spot cleaner ingredients and cleaner products across the board to help you make some safer choices for yourself and for your family. So like we talked about in nutrition, this can be a practice that either energizes us or drains us. So my advice is to sort of take it slow. And if it feels overwhelming, go back to that 1 rule at a time. So what I like to say is to people, pick one of these ingredients, right? Nobody's asking you to memorize 100 different ingredients. But what if you looked at this list and said, okay, phthalates, that's the one that I'm going to pick. And I am going to check all my products for phthalates. And if I have a product with phthalates, I'm going to throw it out and I will buy a product that says it's phthalate free. And if you just pick one ingredient at a time, what you end up doing is eliminating a lot of these ingredients. But you start to educate yourself, and just like anything else in life, you build your vocabulary around this area and you start to know what you're looking for. I feel like no questions yet. I feel like this is always a big one because that ingredient list scares people.
No questions yet, but Anna, we could also, if you're willing to share, distribute that to attendees.
Perfect. Yes. Yeah. And that is even an abbreviated list, but I'll definitely share that. Okay, so we'll talk about this concept of crowding out now, talk about natural beauty. Clean beauty is more than just the products that you use. It's a celebration of this beauty that comes from within. And when we say natural beauty, a lot of women in particular go like, we're celebrating being makeup free. Like that's okay. It's kind of non-revolutionary, but I think it's actually, it's more than that. It's about finding the beauty in what makes you unique. So it's about honoring our bodies, feeling confident in our own skin, and finding beauty in things like eye color, in our skin tone, in our hair color and texture, in our natural body shape and size, appreciating scars, appreciating unique birthmarks or wrinkles that represent the changes and the memories that we've built throughout our lives. So I don't know, I feel like I'm sort of breezing through this, but I don't The ingredients are important, but it's also important to change our mindset around what that means to celebrate. I think if you're not, so this like concept of self-care is bio-individual as well. So if changing your beauty products feels overwhelming right now, looking at the ingredient label feels overwhelming, maybe don't do that. Maybe switch to thinking about, okay, I'm going to buy something that comes in a glass container instead of plastic. Maybe that feels approachable to you right now, but there's always a solution. And again, go for the thing that feels accessible right now, because those small changes will build and add up. If you are looking for more information on clean beauty, this woman's name is Jasmine Alvarez. She is the founder of a content hub company called Pretty Well Beauty. And she is one of the industry leaders in not only helping us understand what's in our actual products that we put on our bodies, but also embracing all the things that make us beautiful and unique as individuals. All right, so we'll talk about detoxing your home. I picked this picture on purpose because I think it kind of represents the two things that I wanted to talk about here. Have you ever walked into one of those homes? Maybe it's your own home, maybe it's somebody else's home, maybe it's a home from your memory, that immediately felt inviting and uplifting. And I want you to think about, what was it about that physical space that appealed to you? Our homes, in a lot of ways, are the foundation of our lives. Again, right now, even more so than they ever have been before. Our homes are the places where traditionally we relax, rejuvenate, practice self-care, begin and end our days. Right now, for a lot of us, they are the places where we are spending every waking and sleeping moment. And so that home environment, again, can either energize you or drain you. And it's important to care for that personal space in a way that's going to help you thrive in all of the other areas of your life. So when we're thinking about sustainable shifts and crowding out, we are going to minimize our exposure to harmful chemicals in things like cleaning products and home care products like laundry detergent, dish soap, things like that. And the other thing that we'll think about for crowding out is how to energize the space. So when we think about minimizing our exposure to toxins, just as our food decisions can disrupt our body's natural process to detox itself, so can decisions around our home environment, including what cleaning products we use, what our technology practices are like, and other materials that can negatively impact our home environment. A little knowledge and mindfulness can help us make a big, big impact. So we'll talk about technology really quickly first. This is a really hard one right now. We are living on our devices. For a lot of us, it's our only connection to the outside world. And so we can't remove it from our lives. I think like 2 years ago, everyone was talking about like, get your cell phone out of the bedroom and turn off your laptop and all that stuff. And that's just, it's not realistic right now. So we have to adjust our expectations. Like in our bedroom, I have a baby monitor and I have to have my cell phone there because the baby monitor is connected to the phone. So all these things, it's just not realistic. And it definitely offers us an advantage. But it's important to sort of set boundaries around our use of those things. So we know that all-day exposure to the artificial light from our screens can disrupt what we call our circadian rhythms. So it can contribute to poor sleep, to mood disorders, to other health risks, and it can cause a lot of anxiety if we're spending times, if we're consuming things on our technology that aren't healthy for us. So instead of removing those things entirely, what I like to suggest is create a few mini tech breaks and just take time to notice how that makes you feel. So if you've got 5 minutes to disconnect from your computer, take it, go outside, go on a walk. If you've got 10 minutes, if you've got 15 minutes, whatever it is, but doing that mindfully, making time for that a few times a day will make a huge difference in your overall health. Even just like starting to examine your habits around your use of technology can be really eye-opening and help you set some boundaries that works for you. Let's see. Okay, next piece, understanding labels. Similar to those beauty products, starting to read labels on our cleaning products or other home care products is pretty amazing. So take it step by step. It's the same thing. The question that I get a lot is, okay, well, you're telling me to replace everything in my home. Where do I start? If I could only replace one thing, what would it be? And my answer is always laundry detergent, because it touches every single member of your family, and it touches every single thing that you put on your body when you are sleeping and when you're awake. So if you can look for a laundry detergent that is fragrance-free is the big one. Or has a fragrance that the company is willing to list on the back of the bottle. So if they're going to use a lavender essential oil or something like that, that's fine. But I like to say start with your laundry detergent and then move on from there.
Thanks, Anna. That's a nice segue into two questions we have
Oh,
here.
good.
Besides EWG, is there another cheat sheet for buying products? That's one question. And then the follow-up there, you might want to combine your answer. Do you have a list of your own favorite clean beauty and household products to recommend?
I do, yeah. So I also, full disclosure, I part-time work for a company called Beauty Counter, which is one of the leaders in the clean beauty industry. So I am a huge advocate of Beauty Counter. We publish a list that's called the Never List. So we have a list of 1,500 plus ingredients that will never, ever, ever go in any one of our products. So that is a really good resource. It's really easy to read and it's really easy to access. So if you just Google Beauty Counter Never List, it'll pop right up. I love all Beauty Counter products. I use them all. Those are the only things that I use. So that's a really good source. EWG also has an app, and you can input products on their website. So if you're in the grocery store and you're not sure, or you're in a CVS and you're not sure, you're in a Sephora, not sure what's safe, download that EWG app, and all you have to do is scan the barcode. And so it can make it really easy when you're out shopping. Let's see, what else? Those are really good resources. Other home care, there is a company out of Austin, Texas, I believe, called Branch Basics. And I think they're out of Austin. They are definitely called Branch Basics. It is founded by a group of female entrepreneurs, and they have all suffered some kind of hormone disruption due to environmental toxins. So when we talk about both clean beauty and clean home care, a lot of what you hear is the term endocrine disruptor, which means that something in the product disrupts your body's natural hormone regulation. Hormones control everything in our body. When we hear hormones, we often think of our sex and reproductive hormones, but we also have hormones that control our sleep, control our hunger, control our stress, control our brain function. So if something is an endocrine disruptor, it can be incredibly dangerous to every part of our life. Branch Basics was founded because all of three of these women experienced extreme hormone disruption, and they have created a clean concentrate. And you buy the pack, and they send you different glass bottles, and you pour different amounts of the cleaner into to make a window cleaner, to make a glass cleaner, to make a bathroom cleaner. So it allows you to customize these strengths from one bottle. So I really like Branch Basics for household cleaning. Another really easy and more accessible brand is Seventh Generation. They do a really good job. They're available all over the country in most major grocery stores at this point. And they have different levels of products, Seventh Generation, but the one thing that's great is that they publish every single ingredient. So you always know exactly what you are getting. I'm gonna think more about clean beauty resources besides Beauty Counter, because I feel a little weird only recommending only recommending that. There are so many, like it's growing so fast. There are so many great resources for clean beauty and clean personal care products that are out there these days. So try something, and they're available at all different price points. Like Sephora now has a clean beauty section. Target typically has a clean beauty section as well. So whatever works for you. And the other part of like staying healthy is making sure that it financially fits into your life, because it can be as much of a commitment as you want. So got to make sure you maintain your financial health in that way as well.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. That was a little long-winded answer. I apologize. Okay, so let's see. Talking about energizing our homes, there's a reason why the home edit, Marie Kondo, all of these things are so popular right now. And it's because A, we're spending so much more time at home, but B, we're starting to recognize that designing and caring for our space is one way that we can nourish ourselves and make more room for positive energy in our life. So physically, energy can get stuck in different places. This sounds so alternative and so sort of new agey, I think, but there's actual real science behind it. Everything that is around us has some water in it, for more or less, whether it's the air, whether it's our bodies, whether it's the wood that our furniture is made up of. And the water can carry vibrations, right? We see that when you toss a pebble into a still lake, it ripples out, and that is the energy vibration from that rock. So when your energy is stuck because physically the water, the air can't move through, it can lead to feelings of stagnation. It can lead to this feeling stuck or feeling just like generally unhappy. So part of what is so popular about these things of cleaning up your physical space is that clearing clutter actually allows energy to move more freely through your physical space. And that allows you to feel like you have some forward momentum in your life. It promotes a sense of calm. It just really energizes you. So when you're thinking about like maybe cleaning up your home, or adding, the other thing I like to think about is like adding joy to our home. We have all these things, but are they really bringing joy? That's what Marie Kondo always asks, like, does it bring you joy? Does it really, really bring you a sense of well-being? And if the answer is no, think about if you can cull that thing from your life. Or I guess if the answer is no, think about if culling it from your life will detract. And if you don't want to let it go, don't let it go. But I think it's super valuable for all of us to do some decluttering. Here's a good one. If you are interested in more detoxing your home, my recommendation is to go check out Christine Dimick. This is her most recent book. And she talks a lot about the different toxins that we encounter all the time. She's great. She's also super approachable. And she has I forget what it's called, an entire brand of home care products that are super clean and toxin-free as well. Looks like some people are writing it down, so I want to make sure that I leave that there for a second. Okay, I know we're also running short on time, so I apologize. I packed too much information here. Last thing we're going to talk about is detoxing your mind. When was the last time you really thought about your thoughts? Just like we have food habits, we have social habits, and other habits in other areas of our lives, we have mental habits. And these mental habits, the same theme, can either energize us or they can drain us. So detoxing encompasses more than the food that you put or don't put on your plate. It's more than the products that you do or don't use. I would argue that detoxing your mind is maybe the most important piece of this. It's all about figuring out what works for you. So for a lot of us, physical health is already a priority. We know we've got to eat right. We know we've got to move our bodies. For a lot of us, also mental health and emotional health are really becoming a priority. And those are things that we think about, doing things to increase our mental health. However, I think it's really important to think about how mindset also plays a role in our overall well-being. So the way that we think hugely affects the way that we feel, and the way that we feel hugely affects the way that we think. Our mind and body are incredibly linked. So these mindsets that we hold, the memories, the habits, the beliefs about ourselves that we have, can all influence our health positively or negatively. So I am going to, one of the big ways that we do that, or we can start to crowd out some of these negative thought patterns, is by taking on this practice of mindfulness. Also super buzzy word right now, but do we actually know what it means? Mindset, I like to say mindfulness is more than a mindset. It's an integrative mind-body approach that includes being fully present and learning to become aware of your thoughts, feelings, and actions without judging those things. So if you have a thought that, oftentimes we have a thought and then our next thought is, ooh, I shouldn't think that, right? So what we think about when we think about mindfulness is being aware of those things like thoughts and feelings without placing any judgment on them. Cultivating mindfulness can support our mental and emotional health by reducing symptoms of depression and anxiety, our need to use substances, disordered eating, and even relationship conflicts. It can also support your spiritual health by helping you connect to positive energy around you. So first thing is presence. Being present means paying attention to what's going on internally and externally around you in any given moment. It's just about noticing, being curious, focusing on the present moment, and not worrying about the future. Here are some things that I like to offer if you are going to cultivate your presence. Focus on your morning shower instead of thinking about your to-do list. Like really focus with all 5 senses on your shower. Single task, we've all got a lot going on, but focus on one thing at a time. A lot of us are not commuting anymore, so we'll pause over that one. Meditation is a big one. It doesn't have to mean sitting still and chanting. Walking meditation is incredibly important. Any kind of moving meditation, singing meditation, things like that. There's all different ways to do it, so find the one that works for you. And the last one is to eat without distraction. Pay attention to your food with all 5 senses. Next one is gratitude. Here, gratitude is just an optimism practice. It can help remind you of the bigger picture. Takes you outside yourself and connects you to something larger, connects you to what you value and what really matters for you in your life. Gratitude can improve our physical health. If you start to exercise more, you feel gratitude for your physical body ability, can help you prioritize your sleep, all sorts of things. Here are some things I like to suggest for gratitude. I hope one of them serves you well. I've been focusing a lot on volunteering recently. I feel like there's a lot in the world that we cannot control right now. And so I have been trying to volunteer my time and energy towards things that I can control. So I live in Florida. We're a little bit more open here than a lot of you guys in the Northeast, but I've been spending a lot of time gleaning food. So going through fields after farmers have picked them and then delivering that leftover food to food banks and other ministries around our area. So things like that fill me with gratitude for what I do have and also make me feel grateful that I'm empowered to do something about those that don't. Last one, acceptance. Accepting means acknowledging your current reality, including what's going on for you right now, good and bad, without any kind of resistance. Showing kindness, curiosity, and forgiveness are all aspects of acceptance. These are a little more, like we like to say, woo-woo, where I work, a little more out there, but they're really, really important. Seeing everything is temporary, especially right now, like there will be an endpoint to all of this. We have a little bit of a light at the end of the tunnel with a vaccine out there. So reminding yourself that everything is temporary, that one has been particularly helpful for me. Like any habit, building mindfulness requires practice. So if you try something, it doesn't feel great, try it again. If it still doesn't feel great, try something else. There's a lot of different ways to incorporate these practices. So how you choose to mentally detox, just like these all other areas, is up to you. It takes time, and it takes patience with yourself, and you just have to get curious about what makes you feel good physically and mentally. And with that, I hope that I helped you debunk your traditional understanding of the word detox.
You absolutely did. I'm going to give people just a minute to noodle and see if they have any last minute questions. I know that we're just almost to time here, but we can take 2 or 3 more minutes. I have a question for you while people are thinking. As a parent of 3 young kids, how do you manage, keeping your daughter's interest and excitement up around all these healthy foods and keeping her away from the Doritos, Cheetos, and Rice Krispie treats?
Yeah, we have our fair share of that too. It's part of being a kid in this country. But the biggest thing for us is getting her in the kitchen and getting her involved in her food. It's a mess. And as a mom, you just have to be okay with some level of mess, which is so hard. But there are some things that even our toddlers or our youngest children can do. My daughter is really good at pressing buttons. She is really good at throwing things away. And she is, really good at pouring things. So anything that helps her get in the kitchen and get connected to real food. I bring her to the grocery store with me, and she point out the weird looking foods. We had a whole conversation about eggplant the other day and why it's purple and why it looks like that shape. But just starting to even increase kids' vocabulary around real and natural foods outside of the eat your carrots because they'll make you strong conversation. But kids are curious, so indulge their natural curiosity. They like to be tactile, so indulge that sort of natural inclination as much as you can. On the cooking thing, don't start with dinner. Get your kids involved in the kitchen at a different meal that's less stressful. Dinner, we're just trying to get it on the table as quickly as possible. Start with brunch on the weekend or something where you're not in a rush, and it can be a really fun experience that's not time capped for everyone.
Awesome. I love that. And then just let them play with the blender. That's always a good.
Yeah, blender, food processor. Our Ellie loves to make those RX bars that we were talking about, energy balls. She can pour the oats in, she can put the dates in, and then she can push, pulse the button on the food processor until it all comes together.
Awesome. Well, you're getting all sorts of praise in the chat here. One more question before we officially wrap up. What do you recommend to balance hormones? Are there any specific products?
It depends on which hormones we're talking about. Definitely happy to continue that conversation offline if that person wants to email me. But in general, for hormones, I would say probably better done with food than products. So a lot of the same things include our green vegetables, include our dark purple and blue fruits and vegetables as much as possible. And then for hormone balance, the rest conversation is also really not just sleep, but during the day, taking times of rest is another really big one for hormones, but it also depends on which hormones.
Okay, well, we will share your contact info then if that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, Anna, thank you so much. That was an amazing jam-packed hour with so much wonderful content. We so appreciate you taking the time to spend with Connecticut College tonight, and just sharing all your resources. We have your information, and it is up on our event site that we use to promote tonight. So all of her background, and we can share her email address with attendees if that's okay with you, Anna. If anybody
Absolutely.
wants to continue the conversation. But certainly inspiring and makes us think a little bit, but you also broke it down so that we could all kind of follow along and it didn't feel too overwhelming. So, and to the 40 plus camels that joined tonight, just thank you all. Thank you for supporting these wellness programs. It's so nice to be as much as we can together in this time. And we hope everybody has a great rest of their evening and rest of January. We'll be rolling into February here soon enough.
Thanks
Thank you
for having me, you guys. This was wonderful. Happy to see everyone.
Thank you so much. Thanks, everybody. Have a good night.